Hello, Southgate family, friends. Hope you are doing well on this Wednesday. I want to do another devotional study in the Psalms. If you will, read Psalm 82, but I want you to do two things. Read it out of any translation, it's fine. But do know that the word gods with a lower G may show up in some translations, specifically verse 1 and 6, maybe a couple more times. As you're reading through, replace lowercase g gods with the concept of rulers or authorities or leaders. That's the context it is in. And second, after verse 2, you'll see, depending on your version, the word Selah or interlude. That means pause. So after verse 2, just kind of pause and reflect on the first two verses before you read the rest. Otherwise, read Psalm 82 now, and we'll talk about it. So what we've got with Psalm 82 is we can incorrectly latch on to certain aspects of God more tightly than other aspects, to the point where we form him into a different type of God, our own God. Maybe we just make a God based solely out of righteousness and we never look at his justice. Maybe we care so much about morality that we forget about loving people. So we've got to let God be God, and that is the first verse of Psalm 82. It's putting God in his place. He is holy, he is supreme, and we've got to recognize this. The rest of Psalm 82 speaks of something maybe we don't speak of too often enough, maybe we don't look at. It could be a little bit controversial depending on how much polarized you get with political talk, but God here is seen as the supreme authority over all other authorities. So the supreme politician or president above all presidents is what we're talking about. And verse 2 is spoken directly to those that are leaders, those that have authorities, and it's calling them out. And so across the board it's saying, how long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked? And then we're told to pause and roll through that. And then two things are pressed upon those with leadership roles. Verse 3 and verse 4 is where these things are pushed on. Verse 3 says, hey, rule righteously. Rule in the right way. And I'm paraphrasing these things. And then verse 4 says, rule as a rescuer. So rule righteously and then rule in a way that you are rescuing. It has been said the point of authority, the point of any role of leadership is to be a voice for the voiceless. And this is where it comes from in Psalm 82. Proverbs 14:31 tells us that those that oppose the poor insult their maker, but helping the poor honors him. So in context, you want to insult God, don't care about the poor and needy. And so to rule righteously from verse 3, we see that parallel in the New Testament in James chapter 2, verse 14. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Another way of looking at that, acting the part but not taking part is a faithless life. To live a life of morality but never care to love those or care for those that are out there, it's a false faith, and God can smell it and God will call it out. And then to rule as rescuer, to rule in a way or lead in a way as you're helping others, a parallel in the New Testament, 1 John 3, verses 16 through 18. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. We ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. Excuse me, not words, but in actions and in truth. And so what we have to understand here, and this is where it can get a little bit political, is that sometimes we can align ourselves more to a political party than to God. And that is a scary thing. That is a sad thing, that we can listen more to a politician or a party than to our actual God. There is no righteous political party, not a single one. We can't be deceived in giving the moral high ground to any organization unless they are directly speaking as God would have them speak. And we've got to understand that politics is just laced with personal opinions through and through. And so if me saying that your political party is flawed, if me saying your political party is wrong, if just hearing that makes a little angst, a little anger, a little upset, it's time for a heart check. It is a time to release that pressure valve and to grab more fully onto God. Okay? Now, mind you, we know that all rulers are set in place by God. Jesus even says to Pilate, hey, you'd have no authority if it wasn't given to you. I'm not trying to discount those in authority. I'm just trying to keep us recognizing that God has placed them in authority. We live under their authority. But ultimately, we go after, we listen to, we love, we lead as God would have us to do. Each political party has its flaws. Follow God, listen to God. And what I mean by each political party has its flaws, if you go farther in the Psalm, in verse 5, it tells us this. You're blind, all of you. You leaders, you rulers, your authority figures, you're all blind. And it says you just walk about in darkness. And so we have to recognize, we have to give a whole lot of grace to know that they are mortal men trying to lead, placed by God, and they'll make mistakes. And we do what we can to live out in a life of righteousness, living rightly. And by all means, we should be a cheerleader for the righteous acts of whoever is in authority, and praise them and speak highly about them. That doesn't mean we speak highly about everything they do, but the things that we recognize flow through a life of God and through His authority. In verse 6 and 7, it's where we see that God places them in authority. To give us an idea, Romans 13:1, everyone must submit to governing authorities. For all authority comes from God, and those in position of authority have been placed there by God. We got to recognize that whoever is leading us, God has set them there in place for us to follow. And so we've got all this, but there's a resounding theme of caring for the oppressed, caring for the needy. And I think the application for us is to, one, look beyond grabbing hold of a political party or a person and grabbing a hold of God and living through that, knowing that God is placing. But the more important, I think, application is how we pray through this. And verse 8, I think, is pretty cool. It says, rise up, God, judge the earth. All the nations are yours. So how do we put this in context? We will pray, God bless America. God help America. God, allow America to do great things. Do we ever pray, God, judge America? Do we ever even pray, God, judge me? This is what verses 8 is telling us. God, judge the earth. God, judge America. It's humbling and it's disconcerting a little bit because we recognize what we're praying is what's going to happen regardless. And so we have to be aware of that. The other thing we need to pray through this and really study through this and see is, God, help me, help us, help our church family to hate injustice as much as you do. And help us to love the poor and the needy as much as you do. And what we have to understand is God, in His holy place, became a poor man so He could save poor men and women like you and me. And so God absolutely loves those that are struggling, that are hurting. And we don't need to be riding on a high horse at any point, at any time. And if we are riding on the high horse, it's because we're riding to rescue, it's riding to care for, we're riding in to do what we can for people. That's the point of authority. So hopefully this psalm, if you read through, you see that God is a righteous God, but you see more of the heart direction for God, and you see a little bit different way of how we can live under rule, live under authority, live under political parties, knowing that God places them there to do his will. But at the same time, when they don't, they will be judged. At the same time, for you and me, we have been placed in different realms of authority. Maybe you oversee some people at work. Maybe you're a teacher with a classroom full of kids, and you have to do it through a computer now. I'm sorry. Maybe you're a parent. Maybe you have different levels of ruling. I mean, we have shepherds in the church that are ruling. All of us are going to be judged based on how we rule. And so we should recognize that we are put in specific places to elevate people. You know, if our position's ever higher than anyone else's, it's to do what we can to lift them up. For example, as a parent, our goal is not to oppress our children. Our goal is to lift them up in the Lord. Our goal as a manager of employees is to lift them up in a way to better them, allow them to work hard and improve their lives and help themselves. So in any form of authority, it's not to push people down, it's to lift people up, is how God would want it. And so hopefully Psalm 82 is something you guys enjoy, something you look through and can change our perspective a little bit on how God sees us in light of humanity. Love you guys. Pray through this psalm, and may God judge us all. Tough one to say, tough one to pray. See ya. Bye.